You know about the giants in the Bible, right? Goliath, the Nephilim. But have you ever stopped to ask what happened to them after they died? Their story, it turns out, doesn't just stop on the battlefield. It goes way deeper, into the underworld and beyond, tracing a wild journey from mighty kings to spirits in chains. Let's get into it.
It's a great question, and the answer goes way beyond just their physical defeat. The Bible doesn't just mention these giants. It suggests a very specific and pretty dramatic fate for their spirits. And it's a story that's woven through centuries of Scripture, connecting ancient warrior kings all the way to imprisoned rebels in the New Testament.
Okay, so to really unpack this mystery, we have to start right where the story does, in the book of Genesis. And believe it or not, it all kind of hinges on getting one crucial word right.
Now, a lot of people hear the word Nephilim and they immediately think fallen ones, connecting them to some kind of fall from heaven. But here's the thing, that's a later idea. The earliest Jewish interpretations, like what we see in the Aramaic Targums, they understood it much more literally. To them, Nephilim simply meant giants. Big, formidable, powerful beings, not fallen, just huge.
So the Bible actually uses a few different names, and it helps to get the cast of characters straight. First, you've got the Nephilim. They're the OGs from Genesis. Then you have the Anakim, who are described as their descendants. And then there's this really key term, Rephaim. And as you can see, it has this fascinating double meaning. It refers to giant peoples on earth, but also to dead spirits in the underworld. That duality, that is the absolute key to this whole story. So keep that one in your back pocket.
All right, so these aren't just some abstract mythological terms. The historical books of the Bible talk about the Israelites coming face to face with these giants, and they're treated as a very real, very terrifying physical threat.
Remember that famous story of the 12 spies? They go into the promised land, and they come back absolutely panicked, saying they felt like grasshoppers next to the people there. Well, the way the story is told, this isn't meant to be an exaggeration. It's presented as a factual report. They had just encountered the Anakim, the literal descendants of those original Nephilim.
Who can stand before the sons of Anak? I mean, listen to that question from Deuteronomy. That isn't just empty rhetoric. It shows you that their reputation was legendary. The fear wasn't just some one-off report from a few scared spies. It was widespread. Everybody knew this threat was very, very real.
And now we get to the absolute heart of it. This is the big pivot, where the story takes a fascinating turn. This is where we see how that one word for giants, Rephaim, does something amazing, bridging the world of the living and the world of the dead.
Okay, so in the history books, the Rephaim are living, breathing giant kings. And the most famous of them all is King Og of Bashan. The text makes a special point to tell us about his bed, an iron bed that was over 13 feet long. Now, that's not just some random fun fact. It's there to magnify his royal status, to make him this larger-than-life figure that you'll never forget.
And here it is, the incredible twist, all packed into that one word. On earth, Rephaim meant these mighty, powerful warrior kings. But then you flip over to the poetic and prophetic books, and the exact same Hebrew word is used to describe these weak, powerless, disembodied shades down in Sheol, the underworld. It's a deliberate and honestly a stunningly ironic contrast.
And down there, their fall from grace is just complete. The prophet Isaiah paints a picture of other dead kings actually mocking them. Ezekiel sees them as nothing more than feeble ghosts. But here's the final nail in the coffin. Isaiah explicitly says they are denied any hope of resurrection. The theological point could not be any clearer. All that earthly power and might, it meant absolutely nothing in the end.
Now, this powerful idea of a giant spirit, it wasn't a static thing. It actually grew and evolved over hundreds of years, shaped by all sorts of conversations and events happening both inside the biblical world and in the ancient cultures all around.
You can actually trace this development right through the texts. It's a clear trajectory. They start out as living, breathing kings in the historical books. Then, the prophets reframe them as powerless shades in the afterlife. Later on, in writings from the Second Temple period, their spirits start being seen as actively evil demons. And by the time we get to the New Testament, they're understood as rebellious spirits who are bound and imprisoned. See? It's a clear, developing story.
And we have to remember, the biblical authors were not writing in a vacuum. These kinds of ideas would have felt familiar to their audience. For example, the Ugaritic people nearby talked about the Urpum, which were the spirits of their dead ancestral kings. The Mesopotamians had stories about the Apkallu, these semi-divine, wise beings who were ultimately banished. So these surrounding traditions really provide the cultural air that the biblical story was breathing.
And that brings us to the payoff. This is the climax of the entire story, where the New Testament picks up this ancient thread and gives us the final dramatic chapter on the fate of these rebellious beings.
And this tradition of imprisoned spirits, it echoes loud and clear in the New Testament. Jude and 2 Peter talk directly about rebels being held in eternal chains, even using the specific Greek term Tartarus for their prison. Then you have 1 Peter, which describes Christ making this triumphant proclamation to those very same imprisoned spirits. And when the Gospels in the book of Revelation talk about the abyss as a place of confinement, well, they're tapping right into this ancient storyline.
So when you connect all these dots, you see it's not just a collection of separate random stories at all. It is one single unified narrative arc. The giants begin as mighty, powerful rulers here on Earth. They are then demoted to powerless shades in the underworld, and their story climaxes with them being reinterpreted as bound spirits, imprisoned and awaiting a final judgment.
So from a feared king on a throne to a shackled spirit in the abyss, their journey is a complete and total reversal of fortune. This story, woven all the way from Genesis to Revelation, takes these once feared figures and transforms them into a powerful statement about divine authority and the true limits of earthly power. And it leaves us with a pretty provocative thought. If even the giants can fall this far, what does that reveal about what or who is truly in charge?